Let me start by asking you a question. This is Alex from Sigma Spirit, aka Maxwell Bridgewater, aka Alejandro, aka the one and only Sigma Spirit. Today we're going to talk about work. We're going to talk about hustles. We're going to talk about career, purpose. We're going to talk about the ways in which we earn money in exchange for the value that we provide the world. So my question for you is, have you ever felt a true satisfaction with the work that you do? Have you ever felt truly in love with your job? If you haven't, it might be a sign that your Sigma spirit, your Sigma male qualities are actually getting in the way of the work you're doing. And it could be a sign that you need to find a new job, a new purpose, a new career, things like that. This video is the first video in a series I'm going to do about work. This is an extremely hard and important topic to talk about because work is everything to many people. And it's a very important part of your life. And if you don't get it right, you're going to find life is very difficult. And I find that many Sigma males have this problem. They're struggling in life, and it's because partially they are not connected to a job that they really feel passionate about. We'll talk about my experiences, the journey I've been on with work, and my failures with careers and professions and purposes and things like that. And I'll also give you a warning and share with you what might happen if you ignore my warning. And I want to share with you some ideas about things I noticed in myself and how they got in the way of doing a good job or being in the right job, and hopefully you can learn something from them. So let's start with my experiences in work. I've had many jobs. I think I've had more than 25 jobs now at this point. I started working very early, and I've bounced between jobs for many, many years. And I think that is a sign maybe perhaps of a Sigma male, because Sigma males are somewhat of a wandering type of person, and they're very independent, and that independence might drive them away from staying at a job for too long. And I believe that Sigma males, men of Sigma spirit, are men who are seekers. They're always seeking something. And that kind of novelty seeking actually can get in the way of a long-term job. So that's why I've had 25 jobs, in my opinion. I've done things like work at a golf course, work at tons of restaurants. I've done security at bars. I worked in a lesbian bar. I've worked in a gay bar. I've been a teacher. I've done consulting. I've worked on labor crews. I've done hard manual labor. And it's all been very interesting as a Sigma male. But if you don't understand your purpose, you don't understand who you are, it might be hard for you to realize why you're bouncing from job to job. So let me give you an example of why my Sigma male qualities might have gotten in the way of being a good match for a job. And then I'll share with you why Sigma male qualities are in fact working against certain aspects of job fulfillment and finding your purpose. Almost every job has been difficult for me at some point. And I don't mean hard like the job was hard. I mean going to work was hard, and finding fulfillment in the work was hard. And I believe that comes from the Sigma male qualities: independence, introversion, sensitivity, rebellious nature, depth, and how sometimes self-reliance can actually manifest as selfishness. To be specific, let's start with my independence. So independence has always pushed me towards certain paths in life, but I found myself working in jobs, specifically things like corporate gigs, corporate jobs, and there was always something very inauthentic that I felt when I worked in a corporate job. When a workplace was very corporate, it always felt weird to me. I think that has to do with my independence. Your independence as a Sigma male makes it very hard for you to pretend, for you to fake things. And with corporate work, there comes a lot of faking it. As a Sigma male, I think we'd rather just vanish than lie to people. We'd rather just disappear. We'd rather walk off into the sunset than pretend we like something. We're willing to walk. We're not willing to pander to others. This made Asian work culture very difficult for me sometimes. I used to work in Asia. Kind of a funny story, after living in Asia for more than 6 years and working there. One time I was teaching, and my manager, she asked me to go hand out flyers for the school on the sidewalk. And I remember thinking how stupid it was and how there was just a better way to do things. I knew in my heart that there was a better way to market. If you want to market a business, it's much easier to do than handing out flyers. And I think my independence made it really difficult. While the other people had no problem with handing out flyers, I remember just walking around and sort of disappearing from the group. And I remember walking to a mall and just walking around the mall and not handing out any flyers at that time. Number 2, introversion. So my introversion is not fully 100% introverted. I believe everyone lands on a scale. Their introversion is a scale. And I believe that I'm probably only 60 or 70% an introvert, while 30 to 40% of the time I like to be around people. I can energize myself through people, and I can also energize myself through solitude. Most of my energy comes from time in solitude and alone time versus time with other people. When it's time to re-energize as a Sigma male, as an introvert, it's almost mandatory that you have to be alone. You have to seek the solitude. So this can make it very difficult for you to find work that you enjoy if you constantly need solitude. Or if you're like me and you have a balance and you're only 60, 70% an introvert, but you still like alone time, it might be hard to find a job where you can easily bounce between things, bounce between introverted time and extroverted time. When I was a teacher, I found that I could work 3 or 4 hours and feel fine, but then once I reached the 4th hour of classes, I felt completely drained. For 3 or 4 hours, I could put on that mask and be an extrovert, but by the end of the day, it was exhausting. So if I had too many classes in a row, I would just be completely emotionally wiped out. I remember my girlfriend would meet me after work, and I would just have to walk in silence for like 15 or 20 minutes. And I told her this, and she respected that because I needed to recharge my batteries. And after that 20 minutes, I felt fine. Number 3, the Sigma male sensitivity of an introvert. When I was younger, I found it very difficult to take direction and receive feedback about the work I'd done. And I think this came down to my sensitivity. One time I was working at a club, and the owner of the club told me that I cut lemons very slowly. So one of my jobs was to prepare the lemons for the drinks. They needed hundreds of lemons throughout the night. And I remember he told me that the person before me could do it twice as fast. And I was so pissed at that. I was so angry, and it ruminated in my head for so long because I was so sensitive about it. Nowadays, now that I know my worth and I'm less sensitive and I have more control over my sensitivity, I would probably just say, okay, because I know my value. I know the value I bring. Number 4, my rebellious nature. So in every job I've had, I haven't respected all the rules. And I think this is common for people, but when I worked in Asia, I found it really hard to follow the sort of mandatory punctuality. And one time, actually not one time, many times over the course of 2 years, I would show up late, 1 to 2 minutes late. And I remember no one ever said anything to me about the punctuality problems until the day that I was supposed to re-sign a contract for the 3rd year. And my director, he just blew up at me. So he had bottled these emotions because my rebellious nature of not respecting the punctuality rule. And it ended up being very bad for me. It was very difficult after that to work with him. And it got me into a little bit of trouble. And I find that Sigma males might rebel against certain rules and regulations in certain jobs. They might find it hard to do, especially if there's something like a uniform you have to wear. A good example of this is from the movie Black Hawk Down, and I think of this when I think of alpha males, kind of regular rule followers, social structure people, and I think of Sigma males as kind of renegades and rule breakers. I picture the scene where they're having dinner, and you have the Army Rangers, and then you have the Delta Force guys who are super elite special forces, and one of the Army Ranger officer says to one of the Delta Force guys, "Hey man, you're walking around with a loaded gun. You can't do that in here. You got to have your safety. Where's your safety?" So the Delta Force guy says to him, "This is my safety." So he didn't respect the rules. He didn't like the rules. He felt there was a self-reliance within him. He could rely on himself not to make any mistakes. He didn't need the rules that other people had to follow. Number 5, the Sigma male depth, the Sigma male intelligence. I've always found it hard to connect with certain people because I was operating on a deeper and more intuitive, perceptive level than many people. And this made jobs like waiting tables or doing intense customer service things, it made it really difficult to do. In fact, nowadays it would be impossible for me to do. I would probably last a few days before I got fired. And it's because we want to cut through the surface with people. As Sigma males, we either want to stay introverted and not have conversations, but if we want to have conversations, we want to get deep. We want to talk about very interesting things interesting to us. My self-reliance can be selfishness. Number 6, self-reliance when it turns into selfishness. Many times in jobs, I've had the capabilities and the qualities of being a leader. But because I've been introverted and self-reliant, I haven't always tried to help people. I haven't always tried to be a leader in the position. In many ways, when you think that you can do everything, like a Sigma male thinks that he can be completely independent, he can be completely self-reliant, when you actually believe that, it's very hard to do things like delegate tasks to people. It's hard to hire. It's hard to be a leader in that position because you think that you can just do everything. So those are 6 examples of why it might be hard for you as a Sigma male to find a job, to find a career, to find a purpose that really matches who you are on a deep level. So my warning to you is this: you need to have self-awareness. You need to have the self-awareness to know certain things about yourself and when they don't match up with a job that you have. But be very careful with that and understand when things are not in alignment with your Sigma qualities. Some jobs are just terrible and they'll never change, but you need to have the self-awareness to know whether something's a bad job or just doesn't align with you because of your Sigma male qualities. The other thing you need to remember, and you need to believe this with all your heart, is to have the confidence and abundance to know that there's plenty of opportunities for you out in the world. You'll find your way if you make your own way. And the last point I want to make is you need to have the gratitude and appreciation that you're receiving this call as a Sigma male, the Sigma call. You're receiving it right now, and it should not be ignored. And although it may be shifting your life, it may be shaping your life and changing your life a lot right now, there's a reason for it, and it's a good thing. If you ignore these warnings, prepare to deal with a life of mental health struggles, confusion, depression, anxiety, bitterness, resentment, jealousy, envy. Pretty much every negative emotion you're going to feel because you didn't figure out how to take your Sigma male spirit and apply it in the right direction. Don't ignore the call. I'm going to cover more of this and teach you more about Sigma males and work in the next video. Before that video comes out, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to write in the comments what your least favorite job has been, and also tell me what your favorite job has been. Make sure you subscribe so you get to see the next video I'm going to make about work. Thank you.